Good afternoon. I believe we've lost some crowd because I don't know if they were looking for money and chasing some venture capitalists outside the room, but good luck to them. So thank you very much. The timer is on. It's 45 minutes, 7 of us, before lunch, and that too on a topic that has actually been discussed so many times. And I'm sorry to, and most difficult and elusive to actually get it done, which is collaborations and partnerships. So we all talk about it at every conference, every panel, and I've spoken to some of the panelists before. They said, when will we stop actually talking about it and actually doing it? So here's the challenge, the timer is on. So as a session chair, I'll also bulldoze my way with the organizers to say that, I'll run it a little differently, and I'll talk about those things. But first, a quick show of hands, and I saw in the last panel there were a lot of non-profits in the room. But a quick show of hands for people to let me know that, and let all of us know that how many actually believe that, these collaborations and partnerships is just a fad. It's not the new buzzword of 2024 or perhaps 2023. And one really doesn't need it, and we are very much fine with doing our work the way we are actually doing it. So we really don't need it. Anybody in the room who actually feels? No? So we do all actually then believe, if I can take this feedback, that we actually need it. And a quick show of hands then, another way is to say is that, do you actually find it really difficult and challenging to actually get it done? Yeah? Or let me ask it this way, how many of you feel that it's very easy to do? You'll have to raise hands one way. Okay, so we have a mixed room, I think, and so let's then get going with this. So what I'll do is I'll try and keep the conversation very real. So no theoretical discussions, as somebody pointed out. I'm a consultant as well, so no jargons, no theoretical talk. And I'll cut short some of the panelists if they start doing that. No talking about too much of our impact, but actually talk about failures and challenges of actually getting collaborations and partnerships done. So if that's okay with you, yeah? Some quick show of hands again? Yeah, fine? Okay, cool. So Akhila ma'am, I'll start with you. I mean, I think you've got a tremendous experience in the sector and the kind of organizations you work with and the variety of work that you have done for so many years. Ma'am, why doesn't collaboration happen? And if you can share an example of, a challenge area and, perhaps one success story in terms of how you overcome that challenge.
I think there are two assumptions in why it's needed and why it doesn't work. Some of it is, forged, kicking and screaming, but it is forged. Especially for the NGO sector, since we complement very powerful stakeholders like the corporate sector and the government, and complement it in terms of depth, in our ability to reach, let's say, the last 30 to 40%, there can be no illusion that we are setting up ourselves up for a very, uphill task. And collaborations are inherent, particularly with local communities. But that again is saying the obvious, that we need collaboration. What is difficult is the complementarity in the first place. It's like, passing the baton. If you're complementing, then somebody is passing the baton to you. They've done the breadth, they've done the width, they've done the scale. Then they're bringing you in to deepen. That complementarity is not easy. They're big, they look powerful, they look very competent, they have the best resources, they have extremely articulate in both in their defense and in their advocacy, and yet there are gaping holes and gaping abyss. And that's the reality. And that's where the complementarity becomes difficult. NGOs look like some set of whining dogs or whining beings, to put it more, graciously. We are all the time saying, too little, bottle is half empty, you know. We are considered to be the the problem face. And others, other stakeholders, their entire the whole structure is such. The power playing and the power, expressions are such that it's all about, getting that one shall we say, happening solution and, projecting it. So the complementarity, both in terms of, the idiom and the way we express, becomes difficult. With the communities, it's even more, because you're really reaching out to the hard to reach, the ones that you don't want to leave behind. They are impatient, they're frustrated, they're angry. To a great extent, they're angry and they're disillusioned. They lack trust. How do you win them over? How do you ensure that, they have self-belief, have self-efficacy? I want to cite an example. We committed 7 years ago to, working in informal settlements, in a large scale, both in Bhubaneswar and Jaipur, to leverage the Swachh Bharat 1, 2, Amrut, all kinds of, huge programs and policies at scale, and ensure that informal settlements don't get left behind. And within the informal settlements, we created what is called what we call highly excluded. On top of that was, of course, women, but all the intersectionalities of disability, elderly, all highly neglected. They don't have voice, they don't have the sense, the kind of power that other stakeholders have. Persons of diverse genders, both sexual and gender minorities. Young people, adolescents, very, very powerless and very anxious. So we also decided that they must be addressed, and it's not easy because WASH is a municipal function. WASH is highly investment, oriented. You can't build your own taps and toilets. And yet, and it's something that, people want first thing in the morning. All other entitlements, all other services can follow. They keep telling us, just give us that first 15 minutes happiness, if you can. Otherwise, please leave. The rest we can manage. So it is in that context that, the first thing we did was to make all of them visible. Do you know them? Have you heard of them? Have you heard their voice? Have you heard their experience? Have you heard their insight? The minute we made them visible, it actually created a flutter in the government and in the private corporate sector. They've never seen transgenders, 40, 50, 60, 80, lined up on the podium and saying nothing for us without us, and they knew, and they got into the business. So we translated all of this voice and agency into all kinds of, localized process. I'll stop with one, which has been the pillar of our, whatever little success we have achieved. And that is what is called a public dashboard. This public dashboard is in the ward office of every ward, which includes about 7 to 8 bastis and about another equal amount of, apartments. This public dashboard has all the details on water, sanitation, disability households, transgender households. It has all the details. It also has details on climate. Every week, this solid waste, waste management, all of that details. Every week it is updated. Every month it is reviewed.
So visibility. Yeah.
And it's like a Gram Sabha. It's like an urban, city Sabha. Everybody is open. It's an open thing. Government comes to the people. We don't talk about government, we talk about governance. So government plus community come together. They do detailed proposal plan. They allocate their roles and responsibility. It's done with great dignity, with a great sense of, leveling. No one is above, no one is below. I think it's all of that culture, that has to be infused in collaboration.
So essentially you're saying
Thank
that intent and complementarity are two challenges which prohibit collaborations and partnerships.
No,
But to solve for that,
they don't prohibit,
but
they just, increase your transactions.
Correct.
You have to transact, And, and in all of this, one axiom that we work on is, communities cannot afford a failure. All of us can afford failures and setbacks, but not the community. It just pushes them back.
sure.
And it's not,
And the way you've solved for
So
in
the
examples-
transactions are more labored,
True.
We have to sort of swallow a humble pie. We have to be,
No, that's-
we have
yeah,
to
correct.
ingratiate ourselves, all of that,
So for us, for our audiences, then providing that visibility and co-creating and designing with dignity with the community is what you found very, very helpful.
That's the level.
Very interesting, yeah.
And what you call an attitude transfer.
Got it.
Knowledge transfer is very simple.
Yeah.
Attitude transfer is very difficult. Yeah.
Sunish, you also work a lot with communities. And did you also face similar challenges, and how did you guys overcome the same?
Thanks, and good afternoon, everyone. Yes, we did. But I also tend to define collaboration slightly differently. Like for example, if you have X program and I have Y program, and you come to help me scale my Y program, I go to you to help you scale your X program. I don't see that as collaboration, however complementary it is. Collaboration has to be collabed, right? It has to result in something different as a result of us coming together. Otherwise, it's just cooperation. We're cooperating with each other. I don't think, Einstein defined insanity very differently. You keep on doing the same thing and expecting different results. It doesn't really happen. We need collaboration because we are expecting different results. And that has a lot of challenges, right? So to answer your question in terms of communities and working with them, I think, first of all, this idea of collaborative solutions with the communities, I guess is a second step. The first step is, do they see the problem that you see? Is it their problem or yours? Because I define impact as my business. I define a problem and I go to them with a solution. Well, they're not even expecting a solution. The one who faces vulnerability has to accept and see that vulnerability first as a problem to begin to solve it with you. So collaboration begins, I think, early on while defining the problem rather than defining the solution. And that has challenges, right?
Give us an example.
So we work with the community in a very small block called Daringbadi in Odisha, in Kandhamal district. Tribals and nutrition-focused organizations working in Odisha is nothing new, right? Everyone works in Odisha, and everyone defines their success story also. We also did. But when we started working with that community, the issue was obviously very alarming nutrition indicators and so on and so forth, and high levels of stunting, wasting among children, anemia, and so on, very visible. But everyone was smiling, right? So it's a happy community, right? Very high levels of anemia. We believe there's a problem in the community. But imagine going to a happy community and saying, well, actually, you don't have a reason to be happy. It doesn't necessarily give you a very good foothold to begin with, right? But what we did, and because we saw missing aspiration as a good sort of sweet spot, we began working with clusters of households and finding one young person who has an aspiration to work with us. And they became our sort of change agents for the community to see the problem to begin with. before we came with evidence-based solutions and so on and so
So you're
forth.
saying they never saw the problem
They
at
never saw
all,
the problem.
and then you got to the common definition of the problem
Yeah,
statement.
yeah. So you don't begin from ground zero, you begin from some -5, right? And you don't factor that in when you create your Glossy's theory of change and stuff like that. You begin from ground zero. So I think we need to factor in unexpected. We also need to factor in communities and their, like you talked about, attitudes of seeing the problem, identifying, spotting it, and then begin to solve it. I think that's one
And the
challenge.
change agents that you deployed in the communities were the one who would sort of go out and build that collaboration, not cooperation, right? With the communities to make them understand that they actually had a problem, that did not see it at all, and then saw it differently and brought it alignment?
Yeah, I think I'd say nudge is the word, or a facilitation is the word. You know, you don't necessarily come from some high ground and say, this is a solution, this is a problem. But when we work with these young people, essentially young women who saw this as an opportunity for them to become impactful, powerful, influential in the community, which was majorly men, they started seeing this as themselves as a channel, as someone who can go with questions that community doesn't have answers for, gives them a good foothold in the community. And then they looked at us for possible answers. Right? And I'll give you a small example, like local foods. Everyone talks about, okay, look for local foods and fresh fruits and vegetables to build nutrition. There's a lot of vegetables, fruits in the community they don't consume. For example, figs, jackfruits. So we help them build sort of knowledge, books and stuff, which would explain what value do these fruits and vegetables bring. And the interns who were working with us, they pulled pictures from the internet. Well, the figs on the internet don't look like figs that were hanging on the trees there. So we worked with the community to figure out local pictures and so on and so on. So you need small nudges, small facilitation to build that little collaboration in the community, I guess.
Interesting, thank you. Before I move on to Mohammed, in the sense that I know the panel doesn't talk about collaborations with governments, but for scaling any social impact venture, collaborations with government is absolutely critical. My own experience on systems change work is about working with the governments, a few learnings. But before I share mine, Mohammed, would you like to sort of share what worked? These are the hardest to pull off. I think most of the nonprofits sitting in the room would agree with me saying that they'd love to collaborate, but it's so hard to work with them. How did you guys crack that?
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. I think at Plan International India chapter, one of the things when we look at partnerships and collaborative partnerships, as the theme of the session is about, it's not just a partnership between the NGO and the community, but it also involves the government, because government is an important and a critical stakeholder in the scheme of things. And therefore, when we work at the local level, we work at the state district level, one of the critical things is to see how we can get the government and its stakeholders involved into that process. And I'll give you one example. We have been landing a very important project on eliminating parent-to-child transmission of HIV and AIDS across the country. And as part of the process, what we found, what worked was that while there was a time when we were working directly with the community, with the government having a light touch kind of an approach. And then in 2015, we had the opportunity through the Global Fund mechanism to have a much robust government, whereas become part of the national program, the government, and the transformation that happened because of that partnership was huge, in the sense that where testing levels of pregnant women, and I'm talking about the HIV testing, which is one of the guidelines, was as low as 15% in some of the districts. In a few years' time, because of the partnership between the community, the government, and the NGO.
How did you crack that partnership?
It kind of reached 95%.
But how did you make that happen?
And the key to having this partnership is conversation. It's about sharing of information. It's about working with information that everybody understands. Because quite often what happened was that we had a certain metrics on which NGOs work. The community has a different metrics. The government has a different metrics. So one of the first thing we did was to see how we can get our metrics correct, so that we are all working in a coherent, collective manner. Just adding to that point, taking the conversation a little further on the community, one of the critical things is not just about our intent or being intentional to partner with the community. It's also about making those investments. So one of the first things we did was not just sensitize our staff, frontline staff, to understand the significance of making partnering with the community, but also giving them the tools, giving them the training that is required to engage the community. Engage pregnant women, positive pregnant women, or children, young people, people from underprivileged, marginalized background. And because many times what we found was that our frontline workers quite often carried the same notions of power, bias, prejudices, and that did come in between true collaboration. Just the whole idea of a giver and a taker, community as a beneficiary. So one of the things we also have done within plan is to not use the term beneficiary. We use program participants. That term. We also have certain very clear policies with regards to safeguarding, with regards to child protection, which we ensure that children, our frontline people have that knowledge and mindset change. We also have taken away the term frontline workers. We use Samagra Bal Vikas Mitras. We use terms which help address the power imbalance. Because until unless those are not tackled, it would not be possible to drive true collaboration between the people who are representing plan at the front line and the community. We also have been taking steps, and I'm talking about some of the projects, to have youth advisory groups or children advisory groups or mothers advisory groups, so that we are able to listen to what they expect. Because quite often in our, because I think all of us know that, but that's the way it is. When we negotiate grants with donors, we develop projects, and quite often projects are rigid, they are activities. But even though we have made a lot of effort in terms of reaching out to the community and getting their feedback while designing the projects, there are times when, because community is not homogeneous, there's a lot of heterogeneity. Ma'am just talked about leave no one behind. There are people who are better off within the community. There are people who are extremely marginalized and excluded within the community. Quite often, their voices also needed to be heard. So how do we be nimble-footed when it comes to delivering our programs on the ground? How are we engaged with donors to give the true perspective? So all those are important conversations that happen to drive collaboration, addressing power, moving away from projectized working to more collaborative.
Can you share a real example of power? Because I think everybody talks about, these jargons, but can you give us one example of saying that how did you sort of actually do this? I mean, how did you engage with the community or change the metrics?
We have a program where we are looking at just notions of power, because many times we exercise power when we are engaged with people at the community without knowing that we are exercising that power. So we have training programs for our frontline staff where people understand what is power when it comes to working at the community level. Simple things like certain languages, the language of us and them, and not a language of we. Because quite often you see, we tend to, our frontline workers tend to use the term, no, it's us. Oh, they are, the community mein to aise hi hota hai. They are the way they are. We have to address them. And we have to tell them that, look, you have to change your language. You have to become more inclusive in your language. So how do we have to embrace diversity? Because a community is not a homogeneous. There is a lot of diversity. There is gender, there is women. Like when you're doing a community consultation, quite often, and many of people who have been in a community consultation would know that when you walk into a village and you say, okay, we want to discuss something important for the village, you'll find that a lot of men would be sitting in the front and the women would be behind, and young people would be further behind, and people from certain communities would be the last. How do you then ensure that the conversation that you are doing ensures inclusivity? And those are the orientation that we have to bring to our frontline workers so that we get the true feel of what the community wants. Because unless we are able to work with the lens of leave no one behind, if you have to work with true inclusivity, embrace diversity, it's not going to achieve the objective of collaborative. We may have landed a number of activities in the community, but we would not have. And just to give one tangible example, we have been working with a lot of government schools, and one of the responsibilities that many schools do is to how to help us get the school management committee, which is a very important part of the right to education process. And quite often you find that the school management committees are such curated, they're not exactly representative of the type of children who are in the community, coming to the school. So that's where we have to make the effort to see that as a civil society actor, how do we work with the local district education people, with the school management, with the school teachers, to see that you get the school management committee which truly represents the sentiments and the children who come to the school. So those are some of the consciousness that we have to bring, and we do bring through our processes.
Oh, this is helpful. My own example of working with the government, and I've been the founding CEO of an organization which works on which works today, but when I started that organization, it was about working with the state governments in transforming governance. And as a consultant, I was very, very conscious that this cannot be a one-way street, that government pays me as a consultant and I start doing work for them. Then that's not a partnership. So what we did was we went back to the government and said that, look, we are not going to take money from you. We have our donors who are aligned with our ideology, and we want an equal partnership. And the government came back and said that, look, all that we can do is offer money. And we said, actually, no, because this is about transforming governance. And, it's about capacity building, that you should be able to do this and not depend on consultants like us. So we actually did an MOU, which is a 50-50% partnership, in the sense that the government actually seconded us people. So 50% of my team came from the government. Only the paychecks came from the government. Everything else was as a regular part of my own team. And 50% of the rest of the team was funded by a donor. So we worked collaboratively, and so we were both very, very conscious that this is the X number of resources that we have. It helped also prioritize the projects, because however much we actually felt that, this is a very important cause and government should be working on that, it was really hard to get through to the government because they had their own political priorities. But somewhere when we had the resources pooled in together, we actually sat down and said that, okay, these are the 10 projects or 10 initiatives that we will work for the next 1 year. The other thing that worked was that as consultants, it was always very important for our teams to showcase the work. And that did not put the government in a good light. Because we could not go back and say that, oh, this transformation in the state happened because this organization helped the government. The Babus didn't like it, and we have to be real about that. So it was really hard to change ourselves and say that, look, we will never take the limelight. The credit will always go to the government of, transforming that governance around that, and we will always be in the back, behind the scenes and, and never taking the credit. So I think a couple of things from my own experience was when you have to do collaborative partnerships with the government, one, credit is not something that you can talk about. Second is that it needs to be on an equal footing, and governments are willing to sort of do that. And of course, what was the third thing? I forgot. But anyway, we'll remember that. I'll remember that somewhere. So I'll move on to Ravichandran. You also work a lot in partnerships and collaboration. Some real examples from your learning with communities, and also more importantly with other NGOs. Because I think this whole aspect of collaboration versus cooperation, complementarity, it works very well when you're not treading into each other's territories. But collaborations within NGOs is as hard like in the private sector of competing products. So how do you, how do you manage that? It's hard to let go and saying that, oh my God, I have the funding and this is my space and I'm working here. Why would I need to collaborate?
Thank you. Good afternoon, all. I'll very quickly tell you what we do at eVidyaloka. We started online education for children in government schools in villages 14 years ago, much before the COVID. Today we reach about 750 villages. We educate around 2 lakh children in these government schools. And we teach English, maths and science for children in 5th to 10th grade. All our teachers are volunteers. We have around 7,000 volunteers teaching these children from 40 different countries in 8 local languages. So that's what we do. So we have partnerships at each village level and at district levels with other NGOs, because the villagers normally will not trust someone coming in from Bangalore to educate your children in Jharkhand, for instance. And as you said, unless the problem is owned by them, they're not going to even look at you. So one of the things that we realized very early on when our first, the first 5 schools we set up failed. And one of the reasons was exactly this, that we didn't have someone on the ground there who could help us set. We thought everything could be online, and so why not do it online? And the villager turned around and said, who the hell are you to come and solve my problem? I didn't ask you to solve it in the first place. So we got in partnership with other NGOs. So it became a part of our model, and the model dictated that for us. So we had to do it. Now, whether that NGO was already into education or not, or doing something else in that village, and therefore was someone known, was a known face. And that became very important for us. So today we collaborate with over 50 NGOs across the country and fund them to work with. We call them partners. And one of our challenges has been with figuring out the right partner to do the due diligence. And because what happens is over the years, some of these partners became activists, for example, got shut down by the government. So some of them got into other activities. Some of them didn't pay their employees. We are paying them, they didn't pay their employees. Some of them became politicians in that locality. So you had to handle these things differently. So our due diligence, initially more desk-bound due diligence, became on-the-ground due diligence. So some of the people we are now hired are actually ex-servicemen who land up at the village and actually do a recce for us, even before we can decide, yes, that's the person. Because we've had situations where, the villager has put a dagger to our throat and said, get out of our village, we don't need you. To a bomb blast that's happened in Jharkhand, just before we landed up. We didn't know that the bomb blast had to do with us landing up to educate children in that village. So all kinds of stuff have happened. So we do a recce, proper recce. It's not that we have solved the problem or we cracked it. We just keep getting better at this in terms of how do you really build that partnership and identify that right person to work
And what's
with.
the incentive on the other side to collaborate with you?
One is they are already established people in that village. This is an expansion of what they're already doing. They're getting funded for it. They can take on an extra person to work with, so they have extra hands thanks to this. And education has always been seen as a priority in most villages that we land up in.
And
So that's the
do your NGOs collaborate with each other? Do they share their learnings, experiences?
Yes, in fact, we do. In fact, we have a partners conference every year so that we bring all these 40, 50 partners that we are working with across the countries to figure out what is not working in other villages and how do we overcome that situation as well. And we bring in our donors as well in that so that they know exactly what problem the partner is facing. It's not that, I'm doing something and a partner is just not cooperating with me or collaborating with me, but he has a problem on the ground. So how do you fix that? And how does my donor get to know that, hey, this is exactly what's happening? I think that becomes critical. You have to bring in the donor, connect with the partners, with us being the service provider who handles the technology platform which we give for the education, the whole platform of our content which is ready to consume for the child in a village, and also the teachers who are all volunteers. So all that happens.
I'm so glad you brought the point of donors, because Ravi, I want to bring you in. I mean, none of this is possible if the donors don't fund for these, meetings where, learnings can happen, and there's actually not, and it's difficult to quantify the impact of a learning session of 3 days, bringing 40 partners in. But at Ambuja, you guys have cracked that model. Work with so many different donors, collaborations here. We've seen that donor collaboratives running very successfully in the West, but very rarely do they come together in India. I don't know if the elephant in the room is their branding or, we want to be associated with this project. But Ravi, how did you manage to get other donors together? And is it like a carrot or stick approach that you follow with the non-profits or implementing organizations that you have to collaborate, otherwise you're not going to get my money?
Yeah. So good afternoon to all. Well, I think I will directly jump to the question, and during that time I will brief you about our way of working. Actually in this process of working with the community, we have developed models, invested with our parent company CSR. We failed a lot in that, and fortunately our parent company allowed us to do that. So the philosophy of our management was that you learn from the failure, whatever the failure. So don't come to us telling that we didn't try it. Come to us that we tried but we failed. So this actually philosophy led us for the development of the model. And till we started our work in 1993, and till I think by 2010, we were very introvert. We are not going out, not scaling our model, because we thought we didn't have that much of confidence. But after that, then many networking partners, funders, other corporates, they started visiting our area, they understand our model, then interaction started. And we are working on scale with those models which are successful with the community. So for example, in water, our company first became water positive. First it was 5 times, now it is 12 times. So this gives us a lot of confidence what to do with the activities, how to convince the community, how to understand the issue over there. And it is not that if we wanted to go there and work for the water, if funder is telling, so we have a liberty that no, water is not an issue there, we won't work with you. Their health is an issue, and if you have a priority for health, then we can collaborate. Otherwise, you find out your own partner, we cannot work over there. Similarly, in skilling also, if we have a developer model, we call it as a Skill and Entrepreneurship Development Institute. It is a brick and mortar kind of an institute where everything, training, mobilization, every process takes place. But those models, we are working with the rural community. If someone comes and tell us, let us work in metro area, so we didn't have capacity. Maybe other partner may have, or other NGOs or the other implementing organization may have. So we deny that proposal because our strength lies in working with the rural masses. And that's why we thought we convince them, we work with them, we understand their issues, we match some kind of a, what you can say, we resonate with their feeling. That's why we thought we will work mostly with the rural communities, rural youths. That's why our rural skill training institutes are successful compared to, we tried in urban also, but frankly, it didn't give us a result. We failed in that. So, but however, rural skill training institutes are a big success. The youth who is hardly 10th pass, never been to any big cities, got trained in our institute, and now he is working in metro cities and helping his family in at his native place. In health also, we have developed a community clinic. Community clinic is completely run, managed and operated by the community. Our support goes in actually human resources, doctor, the paramedical. This support is going from our side. Our side means from the funder side. And rest of the things, space, then ordering medicines, they use this low-cost generic medicines. Then connecting with them with this diagnostic centers and all the, so that is all being taken care by the community. But of course, the lot of facilitation goes in. Other than these technical people, we will have to keep some social workers, community mobilizers attached with that program so that they can talk to the community and try to link and develop some kind of a synchronization with the work. So that way we work, and that's why I'm saying, first we develop the model, try it out, and once we feel confident into that, then we have taken those models to the partner for funding or for scaling up.
Okay, so you are the ones who initiate partnership with other donors to co-fund the same projects?
We tried both. We initiate the dialogue to co-fund with the partner, or at times we work in their area also. So where they have a preference, but of course then issues, then model, everything get matched, then only we work with the
Any examples of any challenges that came up in that coming together of donors and, co-philanthropy, and how did you overcome that?
Challenges are definitely coming because our model is based on certain approach, certain principles. At times that doesn't get matched with the donors. So that time we will have to have some kind of a consensus and set up a line of reporting formats, then whatever the process of having a compliance for them also. So if everything get matched, then it is, we try to written it down in our agreement and processes. So that way we work. If it didn't work, then we can have a liberty to depart and do things separately.
Okay, this is helpful. Keshav, I'm a fellow consultant, and I will take equal blame on the fact that most consultants only produce reports which say that how important it is to collaborate, what impact can it come for collaboration, but we never talk about failures. We only talk about success stories and case studies. At Bridgespan, again, any thoughts on, building some thought material on failures? And I'm sure they're learning from case studies, but there's even more, a greater learning from failures. And the second question is that how do you then advise your clients and partners in terms of how they should be going for collaborations and partnerships?
Thanks so much for that question, and good to meet everyone. For those who are not aware, Bridgespan is a global social impact focused consulting and thought leadership firm. We've been around in India for a decade. And community-driven change or collaboration with communities, between NGOs and communities, has been a topic we've deeply kind of invested in over the last couple of years, and we continue to invest in. So this is a very kind of topic very close to my heart, and I worked on one of the reports, since we do reports, back in 2022, so I'll probably tell some stuff from that. And perhaps the flip side of that is when it doesn't work. So we have laid out a set of mindsets that underlie successful collaboration between NGOs and communities, right? So we studied a bunch of NGOs in India and outside. We studied in Africa as well. And there are 5 mindsets that we surfaced through the report, and the flip side of that will be when it doesn't work. So the first mindset is around, and you all have already alluded to some of this, along as we went through the panel. The first one is around assets, local assets, right? And to treat each community as a repository of assets. It's not an NGO coming top down and saying, this is the problem we want to solve, here's the solution, let's go down, let's do it. It's understanding that, at the heart of it, each community has a bunch of assets and strengths. Whether it's lived experience, local knowledge, relationships and networks among the communities themselves. They have the passion, the motivation. So those assets need to be leveraged first and foremost. I think that's a big shift in mindset, right, from the traditional approach. The second one is around dignity. And I think we all spoke about how every individual is treated with equal respect and value. And these communities are not homogeneous, right? They are extremely heterogeneous. There's lots of power dynamics within communities. There's hierarchy, etc. But the NGOs that we case studied have truly considered each person as equal, right? And the way they, for example, very tactically, one NGO that we studied created a platform for children to elevate their voices. Children normally get left out of policy forums, right? And their needs and challenges are not elevated.
Of all, yeah.
Right? So that NGO elevated their voices through a platform that brought children together in that community. The third mindset is long-term. Right? They realize that a lot of the problems they're solving in communities are tough, they're systemic. For example, housing rights or women's rights or child's rights, right? These will take years and years to solve. So their persistence, their patience to stick with problems. Right? For example, one of the NGOs we studied stuck with housing rights for 20 years to actually see big results. They took incremental steps along the way, and they saw the big result, let's say 20 years later, when some legislation was passed. But they stuck with it. The fourth one is around flexibility. And I think you were also alluding that different communities have different problems, and problems evolve over time. Right? So instead of the traditional kind of exit mindset, which is we solve a problem, exit, they realize that problems shift, challenges shift, right? You solved one problem, you move to the next one, and so on and so forth. So their theories of change are not rigid. Right? They're able to adapt depending on community needs, etc., etc. The fifth is very interesting, what we call scaling in. Normally we talk about scaling up, scaling out, right? Expand your model, go wide geographically, etc. The scaling in mindset is where the unit or the metric of success is each individual. They realize that every individual has holistic set of problems. It could range from education to healthcare to whatever else. And so how do you improve the overall well-being and development of each individual? So they go very deep with each individual, right? And that's what we call scaling in versus scaling up or scaling out. So these are these are 5 fundamental mindsets that organizations that have successfully partnered with communities were able to develop, and would encourage others who are looking to do so to take that route as well.
No, I'm so glad you sort of brought out these 5 points, because also you did a part of my job in summarizing this panel. So thank you, Keshav, for doing that. If I can, allow every possible question, please. And we wouldn't mind if some people want to step out for lunch, but it's really important because this is the last working Monday, and you guys have, come in here for questions. So we'd really like to take all the questions if possible, please. Thank
Ladies
you.
and gentlemen, the floor is now open for questions. Please make sure that your questions are relevant to the conversation, to the panel. We'll pass on a mic to you.
Jai Hind all. Today is a very pious day because we have got Vijay Divas today, and I'm not sure how many people know that 53 years back, India, Pakistan won war today, and we had more than 4,000 martyr soldiers and 9,000 wounded. So we are working for that cause. We are the only NGO which is working at grassroots level for martyr families and disabled soldiers with 11 forces officially. I am third generation from Indian Army family. Coming to all the discussions which I heard and coming to the solution, as from Ambuja Foundation, Mr. Ravi said, that at the grassroots level, the problems are very different as compared to the perception and the myth. So how many times do we really intend to do reverse engineering in case if we want to really have an impact, vis-a-vis to have a ready-made techno-commercial proposal by an NGO to just close it within that financial year? And especially considering those who are standing at minus 50 degrees Celsius for us so that we can comfortably have this conference today or maybe enjoy our family. So have we ever thought, what are the expectations of the soldiers and the martyr families, considering another fact that India has got 7 lakh soldier widows, which is the largest in the world, and why the morale of the soldiers is failing day by day because of our attitude.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Ravi, would you want to take that? And we can all chip in as well. Because I think this was the heart of the discussion in terms of how important it is to take. So I think your question is very valid, but Ravi,
Yeah. See, our feelings are with you. I think in this house nobody is denying that. And see, the kind of intervention which has to be taken, because see, what I am seeing, this issue is completely new to us. Means we are not working in that field. So that's why I could not able to tell you ki yes, we are willing, and that's it. Because what I said, unless we have strength, unless we have confidence, then only we can try to address these issues. First, I would like to understand what are the issues, how to tackle it, in which pocket it is lying. Are they matching with our set of activities right now we are doing? Are you aligned with the impact which you can see on the ground? And can it be transformed to the area which you are looking at? So if everything get matched, then I think there is a point in working and taking the discussion forward. Yeah. Because you are coming from a very different set of background, which is a very valid one, and everyone has a deep feeling towards that. So, but how to address this and how to take this forward, I think you are the right person to guide us on that, and we are happy to take it. And if you wanted to know our intervention and try to match it with your expectations, so you are most welcome to do that.
Thank you, Ravi. Any other question? Yes, please, ma'am. Can somebody pass the mic to her? If that's
Unfortunately, due to the paucity of time,
okay,
I'm
just
afraid
take her question?
you can put up your question.
Yes, let's take that question.
Hi, good afternoon. So it's quite related to the person who just put up the question, that there are quite a lot of topics that do not get covered. We do not pay enough attention to those. Like one could be, as he just said, I'm working for autism awareness, inclusiveness, and I can easily say that, I'm the community and I'm the change seeker as well. But it's very, very difficult to get attention of, the collaborators, the philanthropists, because nobody seems to know what this is all about.
Yeah.
How deep it goes, what kind of, thing is gawking at us. Please do let me know, all of you, how do I get your attention and the people who have just exited? Because we do need to do something, because we are talking of an entire generation that's coming up, and a generation which is surviving right now as parents.
So the topic that we are trying to match is in terms of having you're spot on, ma'am. I think there are several areas, and the question is how do we bring them to the forefront? And I guess, to that extent, we are all equally responsible to make sure that we are not just taking the easy way out and just doing education and health in areas which are near our offices and manufacturing plants. I'll call this out. Yes, everyone is guilty about that, so totally understand that element.
Ma'am,
Yes.
there should be a platform wherein we can at least go ahead and educate the community. Community means, right now I'm talking of people like us.
Us as a forum.
Well, the platform is right here.
That's why I'm speaking.
No, thank you. No, but your problems are real. Absolutely, everyone acknowledges. I don't think there's any two thoughts on that.